You're aware of the seriousness of what I'm saying. Why would there be £58,000 in a carrier bag being handed to Mr. Nagibullah?
Every year, £100 billion changes hands in Britain illegally.
Would you know how to send money overseas?
No comments.
Much of the money is controlled by international criminal networks involved in human trafficking, terrorism and drug smuggling.
It's like a parallel underground financial system, and it's our job to totally and utterly disrupt it.
Leading the fight against these criminals is the National Crime Agency. And this is the story of one of their biggest investigations.
I'd never done a case like this before. Your hands are shaking. All the time you know that something big is happening here.
It was an operation that began with surveillance on one man and a single plastic bag. It ended with over 100 officers bringing down one of the largest criminal networks in the country.
This crime group was like a spider's web. The amount of money that they generated was unbelievable.
It was an organisation worth over £180 million.
Tell me everything you know about the conspiracy we're investigating.
And controlled by one man.
You and your group have provided a mechanism for drug trafficking.
I've worked in investigation for 36 years, and this is the biggest organisation that I've come across.
Growing up, I always quite fancied being a lawyer. I never thought I'd be following people around for a living and investigating crimes, but here I am.
People say to me, what's surveillance like? And I always say, well, it's like hide and seek for grown-ups, you know. It's like I can see you, but you can't see me, really. You can be a long time waiting for something to happen.
You could be sitting for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours. But it may be that there was just one little nugget of something that day that you saw that leads the investigation into a whole another realm.
In July 2010, National Crime Agency surveillance officers were deployed to the western outskirts of Birmingham. They'd received a tip-off about a possible suspect.
The initial intelligence indicating that an Afghan national known as Jamshid Hadari was involved in money laundering.
This man would lead the agency to one of the biggest criminal organisations they had ever encountered.
We'd seen Jamshid Hadari actually receiving bags of what we suspected to be criminal money. Of course, at that point, I didn't have any idea how enormous the investigation would actually turn out to be. You know, we had no idea what he was doing with the bags of cash.
Hadari had been observed making suspicious collections on an industrial estate near his home. After a month of surveillance, the NCA was determined to discover what he was involved in. At his next meeting, they decided they would find out.
A small white van turned into Freeth Street.
It was the only van in the street. Had its headlights on, and it appeared to be as though there was somebody in it waiting.
The van sat in the same place for over 10 minutes. Officers suspected the driver was making a drop-off to Hadari.
You know, when you watch people for a long time doing what we do, you just get a sense of when something's not quite right.
To maintain their cover, the surveillance team requested assistance from traffic police. They planned to investigate the vehicle before Hadari turned up. The driver of the van was immediately detained. But as the stop took place, there was movement of a second vehicle.
It was literally like seconds later that Hadari turned up. He definitely got spooked. He must have seen the blue flashing lights of the police car, because he then switched off his indicator and drove off at speed. Obviously that's not ideal. So at that point, you're just hoping that the occupant of that van was going to be the person meeting Mr. Hadari. And whatever it was inside would be evidence of what's going on.
Searching the van, officers started to realise the scale of what they were dealing with. Inside was a single plastic bag. It contained £140,000 in cash.
It was a massive find, really. If this was just one of the bags with the money, whatever they were doing, they had to be a big organisation.
The man delivering the bag was Larry Foster, suspected by West Midlands police to have local drug connections.
We knew then something big is happening here. This wasn't just two people meeting in the street to hand over something that they sold on eBay. It's just crazy money.
No one in organised crime will be safe. The new National Crime Agency was launched.
The message to the organised criminal gangs: we're coming to get you.
In its scale and its breadth, it is unprecedented.
The National Crime Agency deals with serious and organised crime, from child sexual exploitation and human trafficking to illegal drugs. A trade that's now estimated to make up a £4.4 billion industry in the UK.
Drug trafficking is a real issue for the UK. But we have the responsibility to ensure there is an effective response to a problem. Heroin, cocaine in its crack form, has an impact on communities, on individuals, on all of this. So we have the operational enforcement powers, we have surveillance specialists, we have exactly the skills you need to deal with that threat.
Suspecting the cash seized in Birmingham belonged to a large drug gang, the NCA launched a new operation, codenamed Smarten. It was led by senior investigator Simon Flowers.
That huge amount of street cash certainly sparks an interest. We knew there had to be higher level players. We knew it just wasn't Hadari and Foster. We're not after that individual courier. What we're really looking to is to go far up the chain as possible and to have the greatest impact on those criminals operating against the United Kingdom.
The first challenge for investigators was to find out how big the gang was. And their starting point was the man they already had in custody, Larry Foster.
Okay, should we call you Larry or Mr. Foster?
Larry's fine.
He was questioned at a Birmingham police station.
Where did that cash come from, Mr. Foster?
Is it derived in any way, shape or form from some sort of criminal activity?
I don't wish to answer any questions.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but your home address was searched.
Inside Foster's house, officers found a stash of expensive jewellery and newly purchased luxury items. But there was also evidence that revealed the scale of the organisation they were dealing with.
Are those 3 phones and 3 diaries yours?
I've got no comments to make in this interview.
The ledgers detailed so many drug deals, just enormous amounts of money. Their operation was bigger than any of us had even imagined.
The NCA were on the trail of an organisation laundering not thousands, but millions of pounds in drug money.
So that cash that's been seized is the tip of the iceberg.
And analysis of Foster's phone records uncovered something even more disturbing.
It was a significant find, one of those leads that opens up an entire job.
Phones that have been found under your control have had direct contact with Dubai.
They were looking at an international drug ring, somehow funneling the money to the Middle East.
A very serious allegation that I'm making against you. Proceeds of drugs, proceeds of crime. We're saying that you form part of this criminal conspiracy, or it's being controlled by a person in Dubai.
After 6 weeks investigating a criminal organisation laundering millions in drug money overseas, the National Crime Agency was still uncovering the scale of what they were dealing with. Leading the evidence team was investigator Mel Starling.
I've worked in investigation for 36 years. I enjoyed surveillance when I was a younger man, but it's not very comfortable sitting in a car day in, day out. These days, my role is to gather the evidence. I'm essentially, I suppose, office-bound. You know, it's horses for courses. This network already looked like the biggest that I've ever dealt with in monetary terms and organisation. We could see from Mr. Foster's diary the sheer volume of cash from drug trafficking. You were talking tons of heroin, tons of Class A drugs, tons of Class B drugs, a lot of drugs. And they were probably from places like Afghanistan.
Analysing messages on Larry Foster's phones, Starling found repeated references to a man in Dubai, codenamed the Controller. The communications suggested this person was running the organisation.
Obviously, he's called the Controller for one reason, because he controls everything. He's the man that makes the money. He makes some serious money out of this. He will arrange for the collection of the dirty cash coming from his dealers in this country. Somehow he's laundering it, and then that will feed into whatever system he's using and move the money on to pay for the next shipment of drugs. The ultimate aim is to get more drugs into the country.
We're on a huge network here, and this crime group is very much like a spider's web. So there's a complete realisation throughout the whole team that this really is just the beginning.
With the Controller running such a big operation from overseas, NCA investigators needed to identify the people working for him in this country. They continued their surveillance on his suspected courier, Jamshid Hadari.
What we'd been looking for was an idea of how his network operate, who the individuals are, and their way of moving the money out the country. Was it smuggled out by people, by couriers, taken out in suitcases, in planes, in trucks and cars across the channel? We really needed to find out. So there's surveillance on Hederi. We're hoping for more of the same. We're hoping for more of those criminal meets, identify the individuals and see what opportunities it might bring us.
The problem was, since fleeing the scene at Larry Foster's arrest, he hadn't been spotted making any more cash pickups. But analysis of the phones held by the evidence team revealed the name of another Afghan national, Nagibullah Mohammed.
Nagibullah. First time we came across him was in late September. And if you looked at him, if you met him in the street, you think, oh, he can probably handle himself. You know, he looks a scary man.
Nagibullah was rumoured to have been in the Afghan army. He'd arrived in the UK in 2001.
He was an asylum seeker from Afghanistan, but he, as far as the UK Border Agency were concerned, they had no idea of his whereabouts. It turned out that he was living in an apartment block in London, very nice apartment block, really affluent place to live.
He had no obvious income, but Nagibullah, he seemed to be doing all right for himself, really.
The NCA suspected that Nagibullah could also be working for the man known as the Controller. The surveillance team now waited for him to make a move.
It was a long time waiting for something to happen. But as a surveillance officer, you just get used to this type of thing. I'm great on long-haul flights now. I can sit there quite happily for long periods of time.
On the night of September the 14th, the team began following a silver Mercedes. They suspected it was carrying Nagibullah.
We hadn't seen the car before. The roller shutters came up and the vehicle moved off.
The car was tracked all the way to a quiet back street in Birmingham.
The vehicle went onto the car park at the back. It was really dark up there, but we saw two people get out of the vehicle.
Leaving the car, Nagibullah was seen entering a premises. Minutes later, he was back.
Now, they do have a bag with them. I'm told by the team leader on the ground, and they put that bag into the car. So I'm thinking, this is great. We've just extended that network and found another part of the jigsaw.
The same two guys got back into the Mercedes and went back down the M40 towards London. Sometimes we see stuff unfold in front of us, probably through experience or gut feeling that you just know this is significant.
The NCA still needed proof that Nagibullah was part of the organisation.
We really needed to be sure there was a large amount of, criminal cash that's just been put into that car. We had to know we were onto the right person.
Traffic officers made what looked like a routine stop.
You're actually nervous because you want there to be a result for this traffic stop. You want it to add to your investigation. You want to see some more money, so you're really going forward.
The officers immediately confirmed the suspect was in the vehicle.
Front seat passenger was Nagibullah Mohammed, and there was another Afghani driving him who was an illegal immigrant, didn't have any driving licence or insurance.
But the rest of the car was empty.
There was no criminal monies or drugs or anything that maybe we thought would have been in there. Okay, we've learnt about an individual that we thought was associated to the group, when really what we wanted was a terribly large bag of money within that vehicle.
The driver was arrested for being in the UK illegally, and the vehicle was impounded. Nagibullah was let go and left to make his own way home.
You think, all I've got to show for this is the man that we've just dropped off at the service station. You begin to doubt some of the assessments and some of the dots that you've joined together. And at that juncture, whether you're onto the right job and whether all the effort that you and your team's made is worth it.
With no other leads, the NCA's only option was to return to the Birmingham premises that Nagibullah had been seen entering.
When you look at 408A, and the first time that I saw it, I mean, it's just such a nondescript place, just a shabby little door behind a building. We didn't know what it was, whether anybody lived there, whether it was a business premises.
To find out if the premises was being used by the controller's organisation, the NCA decided to monitor the area.
We found out that a man lived at the address by the name of Mohammed Koshakil. He lived here with his wife and I think about 9 children.
But there was nothing to suggest the man was involved in anything illegal.
He ran a phone stand on Stratford Road where he'd sold phone cards to the local community. Seemed to be living quite a frugal lifestyle in quite basic accommodation, really. He didn't seem to be enjoying all the trimmings of somebody who was part of a multi-million-pound organisation.
It appeared to be another dead end. But on day 19, Koshakil did something unexpected.
Mohammed Koshakil came out of the premises. He had a big bag with him and he went to a bank in Small Heath. On that particular day, there's £125,000 got deposited.
Over the next few weeks, officers watched Koshakil receiving regular cash drops at the house, always followed by a trip to a high street bank.
The more that we followed Mr. Koshakil, the more we realised that this was a crucial piece of the jigsaw for us. Bags of cash that had been collected from criminals in the street were being brought to Stratford Road. Bags of cash, holdalls of cash, briefcases of cash, you name it. We saw it.
We could easily see that the amount of money that this crime group generated was unbelievable. We realised that this was the counting house where the cash is received, is counted, is partitioned off and is then banked in some way.
Operation Smarten had identified a major part of the network. Nagibullah hadn't come here to make a pickup. He'd been making a cash drop-off.
It's crazy when you look at somewhere by a burnt-out old pub. Can't even imagine that millions of pounds going through that door.
If I look back at it now, that was an absolutely pivotal point of the whole investigation, as that really was the point of opening the door to that much, much wider national, international network.
£44 million was later found to have been put through one branch of Barclays alone. The person receiving it would have to be a legitimate businessman, somehow moving millions in drugs money through the UK financial system without being noticed.
Now we really needed to try and follow the money chain and find out who was receiving that money, so we could get to the guys who are really controlling this within the UK and internationally, all the way up to the top.
For 3 months, the National Crime Agency had been tailing a money laundering drugs ring controlled from the Middle East.
It was a very organised outfit. They knew what they were doing, they knew how to do it. We saw lots of handovers involving different people, different parts of the country.
From the organisation's counting house, surveillance was now following over 30 dealers and drug money couriers across the UK. But officers were yet to make an arrest.
Following people around and gathering evidence, I remember seeing these cash handovers. You know that something big is happening here. Your hands are shaking, but you know that there's nothing you can do at that point. You just have to sit there and watch. Because if you just take out the worker bees, they're just replaceable.
Without fail, the cash made from thousands of street deals nationwide was brought to Birmingham so it could be counted and then banked.
The controller's way of moving the money around is like a parallel underground financial system. Profit. That's what it's all about. It's just like running an ordinary business, only it's drugs. It's worked on the same ethics, if you like, of making money.
People are involved in it and they stay involved. It becomes their career. This organisation had people who are specialist drug traffickers, and they had specialists in creating money laundering structures to conceal the movement of funds. And once that money leaves the UK, we have no sense of what's going to happen to it.
Despite identifying a number of people in the organisation, Operation Smarten still didn't know who was receiving the deposits and laundering them for the controller in Dubai. But one of the men trusted with banking the drug money would lead investigators to make a breakthrough.
Ajmal Mohsen. If you looked at him, obviously he's a man a bit higher up the food chain, so we knew he was going to be important.
We realised that Mohsen was actually playing a pivotal role. We'd followed him on a number of occasions, learnt his movements, and Mohsen would be dispatched to bank what appeared to be really enormous amounts of cash. So he was very much the trusted courier.
Officers followed Mohsen as he travelled to different banks. Along with his accomplice Mohammed Munir, he would spend the day depositing the organisation's cash.
We've been looking for a sophisticated mechanism whereby this network paid the money into the UK banking system and then in some way moved the money electronically overseas. So we were hoping that these two individuals would reveal to us exactly how the organisation was doing it.
To try to find out where Mohsen was sending the money, senior investigator Simon Flowers made the decision to bring him in. Be Operation Smarten's first high-level arrest.
Putting the strike in at the right time. It's a real kind of balance, if I'm honest with you. On the one hand, we don't want to show our crime group we're watching them, but to try and follow the money, this arrest may possibly be the best opportunity for us.
Shortly after Mohsen made one of his bank runs, officers moved in on his car. When they arrested him, he was still carrying nearly £250,000.
There was Isle of Man money, there was Irish money, there was £50 and £100 Scottish notes. So we knew the money was coming from all parts of the UK. That's a lot of drugs, causes a lot of misery on the streets. And we knew from the surveillance they were depositing up to 12 bags a day.
Despite the large seizure, the NCA still needed evidence of where exactly this money was going. A warrant was obtained to search Mohsen's house, and later that of his accomplice.
You're excited, you're buzzing. This is it. This is actually our chance now to go through those doors and to find out actually what is happening.
Raiding the premises, officers found small bundles of cash and an electronic money counter. And then, a special hiding place. A toilet cistern packed with bundles of paying-in slips.
It wasn't until we got those credit slips that it really opened up the gates for the investigation.
Each slip was for exactly £25,000. They showed millions being broken up into smaller deposits so they wouldn't be noticed.
Those slips were the most vital bits of evidence that we recovered throughout the investigation.
All of the organisation's drug money was being paid into the bank account of one company.
It all showed a huge amount of money delivered to a money service bureau, Meehan International. You suddenly realised it was the front for the whole money laundering enterprise.
Money transfer.
Money transfer.
Money transfer.
Meehan International was marketing itself as a respectable money service bureau, helping members of the public transfer funds abroad. It was run by Mohammed Yunus.
Mr. Yunus was a family man, he had children, he looks like a respectable businessman. He ran a legitimate side of his business, which turned over 27 million, but the income from the dirty side of the business was far greater. Well, we were able to access the bank accounts of Meehan International prior to any arrests, and we could see the scale of what was going on. It was actually enormous. It was tens of millions.
From what we could see, Yunus's business, a number of years previously, certainly hadn't been thriving. Then suddenly you have this enormous influx of money, tens of millions, over that 18-month period.
But all the money came from trafficking on the streets, I would say. Money received for drugs.
Mohammed Yunus was now the prime suspect for running the controller's UK operation. It was down to investigator Mel Starling to prove it.
You're aware of the seriousness of what I'm saying? All the drugs money that's collected by this organisation is laundered through your business and out of the country. You say you're not aware of that?
No.
You're totally innocent of any knowledge of that?
Absolutely.
He was going to answer all the questions I put to him, and I interviewed him for 11 tapes.
OK, I have seen hundreds of these. It's pre-printed with your account details from Meehan International Limited.
That's right.
And there's a line at the top where it says paid in by. I'm wondering if you can tell me if you recognise that gentleman. He had your credit slips in his house. Never met him. He's been arrested for money laundering.
Don't know him.
You don't know. Do you know that man? Any idea who he is? He's paying cash to your business at the bank. That bank account is in the name of Meehan International Limited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most people, when they're arrested and end up in the police station, go no comment. But Mr. Yunus, he was a very pleasant young man and very helpful. What's the turnover of that account?
Maybe around about 100 million something.
Very impressive. So quite a growth.
Yep.
You must have a lot of customers. Awful lot. They must be queuing out the door. Down the street, as far as you can see.
After searching the offices of Meehan International, the NCA discovered an interesting paper trail.
These invoices, and they are allegedly genuine invoices, they're often ridiculous amounts of money. The actual items on the invoices are quite odd as well. And at the bottom of this particular invoice, nails. $7 million worth of 1.5-inch nails. Hundreds of tons of nails.
Someone was inventing invoices to cover up the drug money flowing through Meehan's account.
What amused me with this one was, well, it's a company in China, the bank account is in Dubai. That looks a bit odd, but there we are. But then you look at the accountant's name, Mr. Yamaha Kawasaki. I believe a Kawasaki is a Kawasaki motorbike, which is Japan. It doesn't sound very Chinese to me, but there we are.
Can you offer any explanation for that?
I didn't have much knowledge about these big clients.
Despite facing multiple charges for laundering drug money, Yunus claimed to know nothing about this side of the business.
As you suspecting, I was suspecting. So where is the money coming from? I thought that if something was fishy going on somewhere.
But he was about to reveal a crucial piece of the jigsaw.
How did the money get to your account?
Lala is doing the bankings as far as I'm concerned.
There was another man putting millions through the company.
Lala?
Yeah. Lala, LA.
Has Lala ever given you any instructions to send money abroad?
Yes.
The man calling himself Lala was a new business associate. Yunus claimed it was Lala who was dealing with the alleged companies in Dubai and Afghanistan.
And you said you'd met him recently?
Yeah.
Do you know what nationality Lala is?
Afghani.
The NCA now suspected that Lala was running the controller's UK organisation from behind the scenes. Mel Starling now had to identify him.
Mr. Yunus, but he was telling me a lot of what I didn't know. But we need to find out who actually pulls the strings.
I'll show you another photograph now. Do you know that gentleman? No idea. Do you know that man? Number 5.
Never met him.
You've never met him?
I can be a bit obsessive.
Number 9.
But you have to do it. There's no other way of doing it.
Number 11. I'll look at it closely.
No.
Number 13. For the purpose of the tape, Mr. Yunus is looking quizzically at this photograph.
Just something hitting me, but...
He's got one of those faces you'd remember, I think. How often do you speak to Lala?
It's quite often.
Is that Lala?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, well, doing investigations is a bit like doing a jigsaw. You have all the bits, but you don't know quite how they fit together.
He is a man I know by a different name. Lala
turned out to be Mr. Nagibullah Mohammed.
I'm going to tell you what I know about Mr. Nagibullah. That's what I call him.
What?
I call him Mr. Nagibullah.
It was a key point in the investigation, a bit of a breakthrough, really.
What I know about him is that he visits premises in Birmingham, which we suspect have been cash consolidation houses. What do you have to say about that?
When the NCA had first encountered Nagibullah, he had the appearance of a low-level suspect, and they had to let him go. But they now had evidence to suggest he was helping run one of the biggest criminal organizations in the country. He was now their #1 target. After 5 months of surveillance, National Crime Agency officers are ready to strike against a UK crime boss laundering millions in drug money.
The time had certainly come. The group clearly had a structured hierarchy, and Nagibullah was at the top of the tree.
Officers watched Nagibullah Mohammed being driven to a Greenwich car wash. He's there to meet a businessman from Holland with connections to Vietnamese drug gangs.
Towards the end, they must have realised that they were now being investigated. However, they needed the business to keep running. They owed money to international drug dealers, so they had to keep moving the money. The surveillance commander on the day had been given the instructions, if they see a bag going across to Nagibullah, that's the point to make the strike.
As soon as the exchange takes place, the order is given to move in.
Obviously, there was no way he was coming quietly. He put up quite a fight. Yeah. He didn't want to be arrested, basically.
The NCA had caught Nagibullah red-handed. The head of the UK organisation had just personally received £140,000 in drug money.
We believe you are a significant person in this organisation. You and your group have provided a mechanism for drug trafficking.
I'm not coming.
With their boss arrested, warrants were issued for the other gang members identified by Operation Smarten. Over 100 officers were dispatched simultaneously in a nationwide sting.
My question to you is, tell me everything you know about the conspiracy to launder money that we're investigating.
Would you know how to send money overseas?
£2.8 million in drug money was seized.
What is your involvement in that offence?
I'm not coming.
More than 30 people were facing charges.
No comment. No comment. No comments.
It was one of the biggest money laundering busts in British history. Over the next 3 years, they would all face trial.
We had an enormous amount of people in custody. They'd given no comment interviews. They thought they were safe. They had no idea. We've seen them in the surveillance, and we've followed them.
They might say, no, not me. And if you can say, I saw you, I was there, you did.
We had uncovered the entirety of the network within the United Kingdom. We'd got to the top of it. We had all the evidence necessary to be able to convict them in court.
32 defendants were found guilty. But in the trial of Nagibullah Mohammed, the final proof didn't come from surveillance.
This bag here contains some of the phones recovered from Nagibullah Mohammed. Most criminals throw their phones away. He was a bit tight. He decided he didn't like throwing these fairly cheap Nokia phones away. He kept them all in his bedroom drawer, which was a little goldmine for us. There were instructions, token numbers, all sorts of incriminating evidence. He was giving the orders.
It shows a clear pattern of your money laundering activities. Without you, it would be difficult for this organisation to function.
Nagibullah was given 9 years for running the UK organisation on behalf of his controller in the Middle East.
There was no emotion from him whatsoever at any stage, neither in court or in the interview room. He was, no emotion from him at all.
He had helped to launder over £180 million.
I remember when the trial finished, I actually burst into tears. You know, it's over. To go from one guy handing over a bag to all this, you can't even believe it. This is the alleyway leading to the cash counting house. The court, I remember seeing inside the premises. It's a bit of a shock. But then all the addresses we searched were pretty much the same. The guys handing over the bags of cash in the street, they obviously weren't making much money. You know, these were the same people carrying 100, 200, 300,000 pounds every day. It's crazy when you look at it. What their boss, the controller, made, we will never know. But it was a lot of money.
French, sexy and political. Spin continues on More 4 tomorrow at 9, and catch up with the double that's available on All 4. But next up, imagine being 60 years married and it's still true love. Meet Carol and Ted, 24 hours in A&E.